costs onto either the participant or the program. Add one Burmese interpreter for one Burmese person that was ordered to matters intervention. So am I seeing that, yes, they must do that, or if there aren't very many Burmese, they don't really need to worry about it?
Well, I think if they're, what the HHS regs that she's given you copies of say is that they're supposed to do it. They're supposed to make efforts to do it. Here's the issue. When you get to the last factor, which is resources available, it's how you do it. So part of it is, okay, you have language access lines, you have communities that have set up, I'll give you the most creative one I've heard of, not the most, but there's a lot of really creative approaches to this. I was doing a language access training in Ohio, and the Cincinnati Police Department, somebody there smart figured out that, I don't know what the company was, but something like HP or, you know, big computer tech something or other, had all of these international workers, people from all over the world that were involved in this. I think it was, I don't know if they were doing research and development or whatever, but they had all these people who spoke all these languages. And so what they did was an arrangement with the company that these people got interpreter training, they went through domestic violence training, and they were on beepers. And they rotated, and whenever the police needed somebody to go out with them that spoke Chinese, they would get this person who'd been trained by them to come, and this was part of the pro bono to the community that the company was doing. You can do that. I've seen programs where they're working with universities, students who are studying language or linguistics. They come from all over the world. They can get domestic violence, sexual assault training, and be on call as needed for these cases. So you can develop resources. So that's the issue. It's like I think the way you want to start is thinking about who's in my community and who should be coming through my doors that aren't. And then what am I going to do to serve those? So for example, what HHS and DOJ say is if 15% of your city's population is Hispanic, then that's an area where you may want to be thinking about your way of providing services is by hiring bilingual, bicultural staff. If 1% of your community speaks Arabic, you may, in your budget line item, a language line or some kind of interpreter services, or you may come up with one of these creative solutions to try to be able to tap into that. Now, what I will tell you is there are a couple of amazing resources. I put them up on my website last weekend, connections to them. There's something called NAGIT, There's an association of interpreters, a National Association of Language Interpreters, and I happen to know that the head of there's a woman named Isabel Farmer, Farmer or Framer, one of the two, in Ohio, who's really connected. So you can tap into interpreters networks, and people are doing telephonic interpretation, they're doing video interpretation. I mean, there's a lot, like if you go to a state, for example, Alaska, they've been dealing this with for years because they have villages that you can't get to unless it's frozen. So courts have had to use video conferencing and Skype and various different things. I talked the other day to the head of one of the most creative people I know nationally on language access and interpretation is the coordinator of interpretation for the Seattle courts. She is very creative and very connected, and is able. They've found ways that if they get. She's like keeps this proud list of all the languages the courts have been able to find for people, and so they do it differently. If you've got somebody in the community that's safe, then that person can be hired. Some programs are training survivors who want to go on and serve their community to use their language access as it. Now, when I say this, one of the tools I want to talk about is a tool developed by the National Center for State Courts for Judges, but we can all use it. And it is, first of all, people often say that, okay, I need to get a certified interpreter. Well, that would be nice. But does anybody have any idea what languages certified interpreters, or how many languages certified, or what languages certified interpretation is available for?
Not Burmese.
Not Burmese. What else? How many Asian languages is it available for? What?
It's only a handful.
Only a handful. Right. Spanish for sure, maybe Chinese, but many, many languages, there is no, quote, certified interpretation process. So what do? And what I love about this tool from the National Center for State Courts is it tells you how to interview someone that is coming to the court or that you're thinking of hiring as an interpreter for this case in this odd language. Not odd, they're not odd, but something you're not seeing that often. And it tells you how to walk through to figure out if that person's qualified. And one of the things, some of the easy tips are, if they walk into the room and they don't have a pad and paper, and they're not taking notes, or they're not carrying a dictionary, you should worry. Because a professional interpreter isn't going to assume they know every word in the language and isn't going to assume they know every dialect or thing that your client's going to say. And if you ask them whether or not they ascribe to what the ethical code for interpreters are, and they say, what's that? Also not so good. So there are codes of ethics for interpreters, and one of the advantages, again, thinking in the criminal justice sense, about using qualified interpreters and people who are doing this on a regular basis, whether it's through telephonic or video or in person, is that from a confidentiality perspective, if I'm an interpreter and all I'm doing day in and day out is interpreting, am I going to remember the facts of any particular case necessarily? No, I'm not. I'm the conduit. My daily job is it's just going through me. I'm not changing it. I'm just saying what people are saying. And there's more safety in that than somebody who's not interpreting all the time. That's just only done it once. So there's some ways. So anyway, to get to there are some guidance in this world. Unfortunately, there aren't fixed rules. So how do you think about each of these factors? So you want to look, when you develop a language access plan, you want to look at who speaks which languages in your community, what are the minority populations and the underserved populations. And I'm not talking about a language of one yet at this stage, because you'll never get all of those. You really want to focus on what if the Justice Department came asked you, you could say I did a due diligence, a legitimate job of trying to figure out who's there. And there's all kinds of resources. The public schools are very good as a resource for knowing what's going on in the community in terms of languages. Many of them actually collect and report and are proud of the fact that they have people in their schools that speak all these different languages. In terms of frequency of contact, you want to look how often they're coming, if it's a weekly or daily basis. And that people where it's unpredictable, and you both need you need to be prepared to deal with what comes normally, and then how you have to plan for how you're going to deal with the language that walks in the door that you don't know. Now, one of the tools, I think I included in the materials here, but again, we have it on our website, is there's 2 very good language access cards, because the other issue is, how do you know what language? And so if somebody's literate in their language, they can, you use a language access card, they can actually point out the language, and you can figure out what they're speaking and try to get an interpreter. But if they're not literate, then I will say this, they know I say this, so they hopefully won't be upset with me, but one of the things you can do is call the National Domestic Violence or Rape Crisis Hotlines, and they have an ability, they can help you identify the language at least. I've also found, so that you're asking for a brief service from them that is related to a victim, they can help you identify the language. The other thing they can do that I've used them for, and again, it's a brief service, but super important. Woman walks into your police department, your hospital, your the Julian Center, and she's got somebody with her who's going to interpret. She brought her own interpreter. One of the things I use those language lines for is to separate the victim from the interpreter, bring the victim in, have her talk to somebody in her own language, and ask, who is this person? Is she safe? Is he or she safe? If she says, oh, it's my batterer's sister, and she brought me here, then you're going to treat it very differently than if she says, this is my best friend and I trust her. But you can use the language interpretation just for that piece so that you can be sure that the interpreter is safe and not actually there to undermine her getting services. Okay. So telephonic interpretation can be a good way of doing it. The other thing, though, I would say is computerize things. Like sometimes you type in a language and you find out what it is in the other language. Any of you guys done that? Have some sense about the accuracy? Yeah, not very good. You want to try not to do that if you can, because again, you're going to, especially if you're creating records out of it, if you're writing a medical record, you're writing a police report, those kind of things can get really messed up if you have the wrong interpreter. Okay, so what is the nature and the importance of the activity? The way the government thinks about, the federal government thinks about this is, will the denial or delay of access to services or information have a serious or even life-threatening implications for the LEP victim? How many of us do work where that might be true? Everybody, right? This is what we do. And so on this scale, there is a more urgent need. But again, you want your programs to plan for how you're going to do this and develop ways to make sure that you can. So the difference is if it's, I'm offering a soccer team on Saturdays for kids, that's going to be very different than if I'm seeking a protection order in the court or if I'm calling the police in a domestic violence incident. Okay. And then what resources available is what I talked about. There are various different ways. The law says you need to provide interpretation, but how you get there can vary based on where you are, the resources, whether it's an individual person who speaks a language where there's not a lot of people in the community or something else. So part of what I encourage people to do is to think about the funding that you are getting, and you can put line items in your budget for interpretation so you're prepared. At the end of, if in fact you haven't needed to use it at the, towards the end of your grant cycle, there's a way to reprogram that money, right? I'm looking at the STOP administrator folks. So there's ways to do it, but you're better to prepare for it, to comply with this, and figure out if the money's left over later on, but oftentimes it's not left over. And that it's much less expensive to work something out and write it in your grant or figure out how you're going to do it up front than trying to scramble and get it when somebody's sitting there, because you have time to develop no-cost or low-cost alternatives that you can't do when you have a client sitting there that needs help. Is that the last one? Yeah. Okay, so going back, because I'm just about done, and I want to be sure there's one. I'm going to loop back to a question that I had in the very beginning, which has to do with healthcare. HHS is actually been, the healthcare system has been ahead of the justice system in terms of language access. And on HHS's website, if you put in LEP or language access, you'll find all kinds of guidance and papers and requirements about language provision in the healthcare center. And by and large, many hospitals and any federally qualified health clinic is mandated by federal law because they are part of HHS to provide access to the health center, the health context. And that HHS-funded programs that are administering, let's say TANF, they are administering HHS-funded programs, so they're also required. So that the government-funded places, like particularly those administering federal grants programs or federal benefits programs, are supposed to be providing language access, and they have their own requirement. And if they're not providing it, you can go to, they all have an office, the HHS has an Office of Civil Rights, and they have local regional offices where you can file complaints that will result, usually it's not a money thing generally, it's a mechanism by which HHS gets involved in making sure their grantees are providing the services. Anything else, Katie, you wanted to add at the end? Katie?
I'm thinking.
Oh, she's thinking. Okay. Sorry.
I don't think I do have anything else.
Okay.
One thing as I guess I can jump in and say something. One thing as you were talking, at some point it made me think of just the issue of, we have had situations where the woman's abuser is from the same immigrant community as her, and just the importance, especially if it's a smaller community, just some of the different resources that I kind of talked about earlier that are local resources. One thing that we always do is we double check with a woman first before we send out for an interpreter. Like with the Immigrant Welcome Center, we'll get the name of the person and make sure that that woman is okay with that person in case she knows that person or in case that person has a connection to her husband. So that was just one thing that I thought of as you were talking about that, is just that, especially within domestic violence, just being extra careful when it comes to interpreters and trying of the interpreter and tell the woman before she actually has to meet the interpreter.
Right, and the last thing I want to say is, it's great to be able to do this with somebody like Katie, because sometimes, because having the kinds of local resources that she's talking about is super important to making this happen for immigrant victims in your community. So I want to thank you for your help, and thank all of you for being here. Oh, I'm sorry, one other thing, we are creating a directory of services nationally, and we're getting at the end of the process where we're checking people locally. And one of the reasons we're doing this is we're trying to both create it and identify programs we know are working with immigrant populations, and encourage those programs to go in and fill out online the whole all the information we collect. And one of the reasons for that is, and this actually happened in a case, is we're collecting what languages those agencies have on staff and in their volunteer pool. So literally, I had a case years ago where somebody called from Detroit area, and they had an Arabic-speaking woman that needed to flee the community because she really couldn't be safe in the community. And they figured out, using our website and the directory, that there was a program with an Arabic-speaking therapist and counselor in South Carolina, and that's where they moved her. So that's part of what we're trying to do, and so that'll be up. It's not active yet, but I'm hopefully in the next month and a half we'll be finalizing the work and get it up. Yes?
And you might mention that you helped train our state victim task force that is working on a statewide one too, so we'll have...
Right, so you have your state participated in a summit that we held, and they're working on a statewide task force that you should think about getting involved in and connecting up with and supporting the work of here in Indiana. Thank you. Task Force on Working with Immigrant Victims.
Thank you so much. Right now, just a few housekeeping things. If you did not sign in, can you please sign in so that we can make sure we get you the CEU certificates with the number of hours, the correct number of hours. Also, the Muslim Alliance of Indiana has a women's only fashion show tonight in this room, and so all of you women are invited to stay. You'll get to see a lot of different ethnicities and their culture, their clothes. So that will be tonight. There will be movies showing for the gentlemen. If you guys would like to stay as well, you guys are more than welcome to. Right now we have a short 15-minute break, and then we will have our luncheon across the hall, and it will be an interfaith luncheon, and so you'll see a lot of diversity within the religious communities. And so, yeah, I'll see you.
Great. Okay, that's good. I'm sure I can get a set.
Okay. It'd be in your email.
Oh, it's in my email? Oh,
yeah, it was one of those things.
Good.
Man, that was so good. The information is so helpful, I think.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Okay,
You
yes.
want network and materials?
Do I know? Oh, yeah, hi.
Or something like that. Like I put.
But,
I know.
okay, thank you.
I know. I'm like, I know your name. I've talked to you on the phone. We've never met face to face.
No, I don't think we have.
Where do you?
I'm with
where are
Legal
you
Momentum.
now?
Well, until I retire.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
One of the reasons is that she's freelancing.
Correct.
Contract.
Sure.
Part-time bilingual therapist. Right.
I sent in my application. I'm just not here.
Okay. Okay. I don't know.
Hi, good.
Yeah, I don't know. I can find out. I don't know that I mean, have you talked to Mary Wibbenmeyer at all? She's the HR person.
I talked to somebody in HR.
We have one person in HR, so I'm sure that's who.
I did a lot of
Okay.
denial hadn't been filled.
Okay.
And then I said, I want to be sure about my resume. And she said, well, she'd have to check that.
Okay.
Because you never got it. She didn't.
Okay.
So, oh my God. So I was
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Yeah. Well, I can mention something to Mary and just say that I talked to you and that, yeah.
that we worked together.
Yeah.
Yeah. They supposed
Yeah.
So, but then
Yeah. Yeah,
Here's
'cause
what I would do. I would call.
I know, because I would
I
go
would go online and look at the Office of Civil Rights at HHS.
I was like,
And
oh, we
call
have
the
I checked the
regional,
website and I was like,
you
oh,
know,
we have a
council
position open. I didn't even
and
realize.
say, I'd like your help.
Yeah, like I had more
And they
connection
could,
with
anybody
some
can
of the other
file,
therapists
like,
there than
like you
because
can
he
be
wasn't there for
anonymous,
very
you can
long,
initiate
other
and say, look, there's a
therapists,
problem in this
so-
place, I want you,
I can
because what
mention
they do is they don't
something
file a lawsuit, they investigate.
I do know
And
who
you
she
could even
is,
volunteer
and
to
I don't
go
know
out
what's
and
going on with the
send people
process.
to,
I'm not part of that at all.
They could, what they
Right.
may do is test it.
Right,
So they
right,
may,
I know. I
like,
mean,
find
you
people
were
who speak Spanish or
our
go in and try
go-to
to find
person
what
for a
happens or
long
whatever
time,
language.
so, yeah.
I mean, the other possibility,
Okay.
before you go to the federal
Right.
government, you know, is that you could
Okay, all right.
ask for a meeting, you know, you could work with
I don't
others or,
either.
and ask for a meeting
I don't
with the
either. I'm not sure how many. I don't know
Contact
either.
the, you know,
Yeah, right. I'm sure. That's like perfect. Okay. Yeah, I will pass. I will talk to her and just see.
you
what-
should
what's
definitely call
happening with the
HHS.
process and tell her
I'm
I
just
talked
trying to
you
think
and
of where.
that I've worked
Do you have
with
a
you
card?
before. So.
Put on the back of your card
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
need.
It's nice to
the
meet you face to face.
Civil Rights
There's so
name
many
of the
people. I
person
know.
and number,
Like you're not
contact
Janet. I know this person. I know, and I'm like, you're not Janet. You're Jeanette. So, like, yeah, it's funny that the names where I'm like, I know this name,
Right,
but
I
I've
see.
never actually put the face to the name.
Right.
So.
No, this is not unusual. That's why HHS has an
Nice
office.
to- I'll talk to her.
They've been
Hi.
dealing. The point is, if nobody says anything, it's
Okay,
never going to
thanks.
change.
I know you walked in, and I thought, all I put about healthcare was Wishard, and then I was like, I don't know what she's gonna
So
think.
do you, here's the issue, do they go by themselves?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Like you can't go with them. Could you recruit, who? Where are you, what city?
Oh yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
So could you recruit college students?
Is there?
Who could be
Oh, okay.
volunteers that could
okay.
go with
I don't
them?
think I've ever met
You know,
him.
Spanish-speaking college students who could go with them, and
I just
their
think it's
job
such a-
would be
it's such a
to
good
accompany,
program.
write down
It's so
what the
cool
worker
because
says,
it's just
to write down what they
natural.
ask, you know, just have the documentation.
I mean, it's just
When I leave the application, I will write on there for the community. But it's ourselves, like myself, I'm stated in the sentence. Parents speak Spanish with minors, children on.
Right, basically.
And so, usually the second time it will through.
Right, and what
Right,
I would
'cause
say
you
is I
know
wouldn't say
the
parents'
network
legal
of
status,
people,
I would,
right.
in the future, so you don't have a record of them being undocumented, what I would say is they were asked questions about their legal status, but
right.
they're not applying,
Right.
and
And
so.
I like it because I mean, there's just like I was saying, like
Exactly.
when somebody comes.
So
in
parents are
your
not
building
applying, and
that's
so they're
from
asked
a
questions
country that
about
I've
them,
never, like, I don't know.
their qualifications, and they
don't know anything about their community here, and that's such a good resource to call and network and then find out who else
Yeah,
I need to
they are.
call and talk to.
That's why it's so important to have them prepped and to say, I'm not going to ask her any questions about my documentation or my social security number because I'm not applying for benefits, and I don't want, and they don't even have to know that it's immigration status. They
I
like,
know,
I'm
I
not
know. I
applying,
saw
so
that
you
as
don't-
soon as
you
I
don't-
seriously
you're
I
not
saw
supposed to
you and I
ask any of
thought I
those
should have
questions.
put more resources down for that. But
Sure,
like I said, it wasn't a comprehensive list. But
Yeah.
I know, and I knew that would happen. I'm like, I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna see all these people, and I'm gonna think, who didn't I put on that resource list?
For the Advantage program, like Wisher Advantage.
Hi. Good, how are you? This is why I asked you what languages you
good. Is
spoke,
that where you
and then
work?
I forgot to add the other 2 languages on the list. Because I thought, I asked you because I was turning in these like the day that I
when you say
asked you, and
shalom,
then
is it
I had to change some other things, and then as soon as I said them in, I never added those 2, so.
Fantastic.
Back in 1994.
Wow.
We stayed in there.
It's great. Wonderful. Peace is a good
Yeah.
name in any language.
Okay.
Actually, one of the languages I speak is Hebrew. Hebrew and Spanish.
That's helpful. And I told you I was going to call you about somebody,
so
and I
Office of
still
Civil
need to call you
Rights at
about.
HHS.
And now I have a release from her, so yeah, I need to call you and ask you about her. So yeah, that's who it is. Yeah, it's so yeah. I just had never like gotten her to sign a release because she was telling me stuff, and I'm like,
And I might, you
but
know,
she
one
only
of the
gives me like
things
that
I've been
information, and I'm
thinking
like,
about
let me-
for a
can I
while
just
is trying to get,
so I know exactly what the situation
kind of
is.
put together a toolkit
Right,
of how do you
right.
file a civil
And
rights
I know that
complaint.
because
But the issue is,
she's in transitional housing.
it's
so,
just, sometimes it's
like,
much
but
more simply
Glennis
resolved
and I
than
both have
that.
been
So
working with her,
I will get you the
but I know that
information and
Glennis
find
had
out
been
who's
talking
here,
to you, so I was
what
like, okay,
region.
but now it's kind of, Glennis is kind of stepping away from working with her. So I'm like, I just want to talk to you, so I know. Yeah, work and housing, and I'm like,
Right,
let me
right.
call her, make sure I
Well, of
fully
course, because what they do is they say,
Yeah, we'll talk
Garcia,
about
you
it,
don't
yeah.
qualify. I mean, that's
yes,
but
I worked with, like I said, I
national
worked
origin
last week.
discrimination,
Our
which is why it's a
Spanish
civil rights
speaking shelter
violation.
advocate was out.
It's national. I mean,
So
if you
worked
look at
with
somebody
her-
the
with
way
her
they look
last
or
week,
what their name is,
and then
and you're saying you're assuming
she's
they
now
don't
with
qualify,
the-
that's illegal.
the
That's
other shelter
discrimination.
advocate. So,
And by a
but
federal
I think
government
she's
employee.
doing- She's working. I mean, that's. She just seems. She's so nice and so young and. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
You're not going to be able to track them. Well, but you can track them yourself. What you can. Here's what I would do.
Called me with that.
I would go get. I have one in there.
There
like
was
a
another
notebook.
lady that called me. Like,
And you
called
know,
and then
make
she
yourself
called and then
notes. I sent this
the
person
actual
either
girl called.
whatever,
That's who
of
it
what
was.
you, who you were interacted with, and what
she
happened.
actually
So because that
ended
will
up-
give the
I
civil
ended
rights
up being
people
on the
eventually,
phone
even if you
with
don't
the
do
girl that
something
came
now,
in for half an hour.
you're
and she
creating a
just
record
kept
of the various
driving
things that's
past.
happening.
I'd be like, turn left, and then
Because
she
they're not
like
supposed to be
wouldn't.
happening.
And then
And
she,
this-
I'd be
I
like,
would
turn around, and then
imagine
she'd
that
like
you would
drive
be
past
able
it
to get
again, and
the
I'd be
civil
like,
rights
"You're so-"
folks
I
to
was
do
like,
something.
I was this close to just being like, right. And I always say like across from the Citizens Gas Building because usually people know that, but like it was
they
just
didn't
so
have the
funny.
interpreter.
Like, and I thought, man, am I just not like speaking well? I was like, what is wrong with me? And like, I was this close to just saying, stop, I'm gonna come find you because we're so. And then they found it. So I was like, she found it. But then the next day when I talked to her, she'd gone to work that night, and she's like, I ended up getting back a lot later because I got
You're
really
delivering
lost.
them.
And I
They
was like, okay, I
won't
think she
create
just
any
has
paper trail
direction
that they
issues.
ever accepted.
Like, right. She's young. Right. Yeah.
You don't have a way of saying, I know you received it. Well, you know you sent it, but still.
Yeah, she's real young
Okay.
and cute. But I'm like, man, she's really.
Let me see
like,
if I could even call somebody
independent. She may
during
not even realize it. So how independent.
I have good contacts within the
Right.
advisors, but when it comes to recommending
to the
Right,
to
don't
actually get the
get out of
caseworker to
that.
give them the
Yeah.
permission to get Medicaid. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and what's going on here is if you're talking about
I know, it kind of worked. I just happened to be at the front desk when you
talking
called,
about
so I was like,
qualified immigrants, and you're talking about U.S. citizen and qualified immigrant kids, some
Yeah.
of which may have undocumented family members or parents that are getting denied benefits.
right.
HHS did a whole study on this when Tom Harris, who's the head of Civil Rights in the Department of Justice now, was the head of Civil Rights at HHS. He did a lot of work.
And I used to,
And I will
in shelter,
I'm gonna check
do
and
a lot
see.
more
Maybe I can even do it before I leave
A
today.
lot more just like out in the courts a lot. And so it's funny because the staff has really changed at Court 21. Like advocates and staff, like,
here's the
I'm
issue.
like, I
You could,
know people
but
as
if
well
what
as
you're
I used to
dealing
because I'm not
with
interacting as much.
is
so.
a bureaucratic structure that hates immigrants, and they're going to say, well, they're all trying to apply, whatever they're going to say. It's not the
Okay.
media. I would go to HHS. I mean,
Yeah,
if you're
'cause I used
thinking
to call
media,
and
I mean,
talk to Michael
go to
a lot.
HHS and
Like,
get
he
the
was
wheels
really,
of
really
justice
helpful.
turning and
So,
get
but
them
that's what
to
I've heard is
investigate.
that.
You know, and
Okay.
I'd be happy to, if in fact you got somebody
Yeah.
involved, I'd be happy
Yeah.
to talk to them. And,
Absolutely.
there may be ways to actually go and send testers.
Right,
Where you send
right,
somebody,
yeah.
if they're treating everybody who looks Latina the same. My husband's actually doing,
Yeah.
he's a retired government
Yeah.
person. He's going to be a tester for Medicaid, for like Part 2B or whatever. He's like 65, 63. And so they're going to hire him, gray beard and whatever, to go in and apply and see if they how these people are treating him. So it's a tester. He's actually, yeah. But I'm just saying,
Well,
this is a kind of
usually to
thing
get into transitional
where you
housing,
guys could
you have to be in
actually,
shelter.
right now, you could actually
that's-
find somebody that the workers don't know. So if they know you, you can't go.
No, but I know,
She wants to live independently, and this family wants to.
yeah.
I mean, you could
Exactly.
contact
So that the
you
one
could
way of
talk about
documenting
more
it
with
is that way,
different
but you have real
traditional
cases.
rooms. We're actually
And so part of
full
what I would do
right
first,
now.
probably, because it has two
Yeah.
benefits. One, it creates you a real, the Hispanic Students Association, or Latino
Yeah.
Students Association at the university, and say you need some help, you need them for a project. And the project is, will
Is
they
there-
accompany your clients, 10 clients, whatever. We're gonna go
Okay.
apply for benefits. And take notes on what happens.
Yeah, because that's what I would do is just kind of see and collaborate with and see if they have. Yeah, because we're full and we're not going to have an opening for a while. So
Right.
yeah. Oh, the shelter. I know the shelter's really full, but yeah,
Right.
transitional is full. I don't know.
But
that
this
we'll
is
have
all changed
another opening for a family until April.
Well, you
and
can
we'll have
still do
another room
you can still do the work for
single
them.
until
but
like.
even if you did this
who
this way, the
knows?
volunteers would have
Yeah.
documentation that
So-
it was actually delivered to such and such a person on such and such a day.
Okay, all right.
Right?
Nice to talk to
And
you.
then either
Hi.
they'll start getting
Sorry,
grants-
I feel like I'm like way up here.
I don't know.
It feels
you
good
could
to sit
do both.
down
You
though.
could talk to HHS and figure out how they're going to proceed. I mean, I'm of two minds. Sometimes you just want them to get caught.
Okay.
But I think you want to try to get as many clients benefits in the meantime. Do you have contact with your clients that were denied?
I work with Gallagher.
Oh.
So I speak like Hindi, Gujarati, Punjabi. I understand other Indian languages.
You don't know what region? I'll have to call and figure out whether. Chances are you guys are in the Chicago region.
They were saying like sending them to Gallagher.
But I don't know.
I said,
I have to figure out HHS how they divide it up. But let me try to do some scouting around, and I'll get back to you. Okay, sure.
I have a slow sliding scale for those clients, and I will volunteer to provide services because if they don't have insurance, then there's an issue.
Right.
So if they have
insurance,
if they have
then
Medicaid, Medicare,
Okay.
that would be fine.
they. Okay.
But if they don't have, then I'm going to talk first, like we can work out a
Right.
sliding scale
Right.
or something.
Because I think there's one girl that I'm working with right now, and she's actually, she qualifies as a trafficking victim. Like the abuse is actually like family related, but it's a trafficking case. And she doesn't quite get benefits yet. That would be so great.
Yeah, because I recently worked with one girl who wanted to reincarnate to alternative.
Okay.
And they approached me because
I don't know who that is. Okay.
I think
Maybe I do. I don't know.
yeah. So she told me that they approached me because she knew English, she was fine, but after talking to me it was different.
It's different. It's just different. Even if somebody's almost fluent in English, it's nice to talk
I
to
do have
somebody.
background in domestic, but I've worked for 2 years in church. I have mental health background.
Okay.
And I work in India also, so I think that really helps. So I was
Right.
like, if I can
Right.
use those skills. So I'm giving you my.
Okay.
Do you have your plan?
I do probably. Let me go grab my
Because
person's.
I need.
I'll be right
will
back.
you be the right person to contact? Because right now the recipe because I can't figure out the I'm really
Is there any possibility? Actually, what's interesting is that it's merged to taxes. And so we all of a sudden, their law,